Hello everyone, we're here at the Next Web in Stream Ivan LiveView studio, and as the GDPR came into force today, we decided to make an exclusive session, panel discussion about what does that mean for event organizers. My name is Simona, I'm from Event Organisers Network, and I'm here with Dorian from Flawless Legal Agency, who's our lawyer today, and Bernardo from Growth Tribe, who's going to be helping us discussing topics around marketing and how to market your events. So let's start. Thank you very much for joining me on the panel, guys.
Yes.
And as you probably all realized with your overfilled inboxes on the GDPR emails that are now streaming in, because apparently everyone realized yesterday that the GDPR is coming in force today. There is an upside and a downside to the whole discussion, but we believe that it's quite important for people to understand where the data is coming from and how is it used, how companies and websites are tracking it, etc., etc. Today we're going to zoom in a little bit on the event organizers industry and what kind of implications are coming from this for event organizers. So I would like to start with maybe Dorian explaining a little bit about the whole mind map and the B2B and the B2C relationships of event organizers. And maybe before you start, though, you can introduce yourself.
So my name is Dorian Andrzejewski. I started out with a legal agency to provide legal help to various creatives in the industry, mostly focusing on Amsterdam and different cities throughout the Netherlands. And we already had a talk last week about the GDPR and what it means for event organizers. Myself being with a background of an event organizer with a production company called Event Care. So it was an interesting subject we breached, and we tried to find which things are really clear, which things we still don't know that much about. So we're gonna try to clear those things up today. So first, a little backstory about the GDPR. There have been various regulations and laws, especially laws within European Union member states already in place, which discussed a lot of the things that the GDPR actually goes into detail about. However, the GDPR is the first regulation that encompasses the whole European Union as a whole and all of its citizens, which is an interesting piece of legislature, because in this way everyone is guaranteed the same minimum rights under the GDPR as a data subject in the European Union. With the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, it came to light that a lot of people really don't know what their data is being used for and what they can do to make it a little bit safer. The GDPR is a great awareness campaign for using your personal data, how companies use your personal data, and which safeguards are in place for people to actually go and do something about getting your data back.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that it's already existed before, so it's nothing new really, right, on the market, let's say. It's really just more about informing the end users about how their data is being stored and used further. So that's nice, and that's also something where Bernardo, you can also introduce yourself, but you can then touch upon the.
I'm Bernardo. I'm data scientist at Growth Tribe. Basically, it was a good use case for me to think about what would be the implications for the event organizers, because it was like solving a real use case. And Dorian mentioned the case of awareness, and one of the first things I tried to come up with would be how this business, the smallest ones, they try to increase awareness for their events. So, and what would be the first implications? And this is, as Dorian said, we already have a regulation about the e-privacy that affects the cookies. Every time we visit a website, every time we have, for example, an AdWords campaign, which is basically using a Google service to let other people know about my website, know about my product. The first time they come to my page, they will see my cookies policy, and this was already in place before the GDPR.
Yep.
Now what we will have to take care of is the copywriting you have on that, and how we update our privacy policies. Okay. So, as Dorian mentioned before, I see this as one step further on educating users I think 2018 will be in history for that, as let's say when the first traffic code was issued in the UK to teach people how to drive cars, or even in the 1980s when financial products, they had their first investment policies and what would investors have to sign in order to say that they were aware of the risks of an investment fund. Nowadays it's exactly the same. We are seeing this, but on the data privacy side. So basically when we click on those cookies, we are like signing a prospect of an investment fund or getting a driver's license, or at least the website builders, they will have a proof of that they gave me the consent, at least for this first touching point, which is what we call in growth hacking or in growth marketing an awareness campaign. And then you can use the most classic tools for that are, for example, AdWords. I have no data yet about my user. First time they come to my website, I need to be sure that they give me consent to first optimize my page based on their consent, and later on I can even target them in other websites, because I might have pixels in my website that tell Facebook or other pages that person came to my website. So I will be able to retarget them.
So that is a really interesting thing, because obviously in the events industry we have the advertising part of if you can have the biggest best event out there, but if nobody knows about it, then it's not going to be success, right? So the advertising is definitely a big part of it, and we're going to touch upon that later with the whole funnel that you prepared. So, but before that, I think it would be really nice to do a little overview of what data streams event organizers have. So I'm an event organizer. Pretty much the question is, I'm an event organizer. GDPR is enforced from today. What do I do? Where do I start? What is it for me? What does it mean for me? Where is my database? Where is my data? What are the implications for me as an event organizer? And so the first step would be really mind map your network, because there is a bit of a distinction between the B2B and the B2C vendors or clients, and GDPR is really steered more towards the B2C and controlling those data streams, right? So I would say we just line up the B2B vendors, because those are quite the typical ones, like caterers. As an event organizer, you have caterers, you have event venues, you have production companies, right? Those are the ones where you have a business contract in place, where their intent and the interest is clearly there for being updated and contacted for business proposals. So that does not necessarily so hardcore fall under GDPR in that case. The more interesting area is then the B2C area, but I'll let you jump in here.
So adding on to that, to like the B2B side, well, still you have visitors, but most of the times if it's B2B, business to business, those are probably business relations or people who are legitimately interested in the event you're hosting. So for example, if you're doing something like the Next Web and you're sending out an email to everyone who has already been at the Next Web, he or she is probably doing something tech related, so they're interested in the event already. It's much easier to acquire, well, not consent, but proof that you are sending it out with legitimate interest, offering people the option to actually opt out for receiving those promotional emails or advertisements. With B2C, however, it becomes more difficult. If, let's say, you are a company who does festivals, and on the one hand side you do a techno related festival, but at the same time you do a festival which focuses more towards, let's say, trance music.
Or a completely unrelated event for that matter.
Exactly. So the people who would go to your techno festival don't necessarily want to be informed about a festival where you're doing something, a fashion festival, for example, even though you're the same company and you're trying to use the same data set. So it's more difficult to show that that you have an actual legitimate interest in providing those your former customers with a new festival that doesn't
fit in their interest.
Exactly. So it's difficult, much more difficult. So exactly as you said, the first part that you need to do is map it out how your data flows look like. And you're at that moment you're processing data from different vendors, as you already described, but you're also processing a lot of personal data of your customers. And that is the most interesting aspect, where you really need to focus on what you can and cannot do under the GDPR.
Yeah, I guess a big term to distinguish between is being a data processor under GDPR and being a data controller under GDPR, and at what point you turn from the processor, which is the safe side, into the controller, right? And pretty much the moment you download your guest list from a ticket provider's website and you actually have those names with those email addresses stored on your computer in an Excel sheet overview, you are a data controller, right? From that moment.
So you can either be a data processor or a data controller, or you can be both at the same time. So the most important distinction is made on what you actually do with the data, not on the whole term or how you describe yourself. It is, what do I do with the data? Do you only process it in terms of a contractual obligation? So for example, if you are a party such as MailChimp, you are a processor. You only receive email addresses and you send out the email according to the principal, to the data controller. The data controller, however, decides the what, how, and why. And on that basis, he or she can decide what the data is being used for.
But actually, I mean, saying this, I think most of us will be data controllers at some point anyways, right? Because the data sets obviously provides a lot of learning, and that then goes back a little bit to the advertising, right? The way people interact with my website, and do they see the ad on Facebook afterwards? How does that whole work? Then you automatically learning from that data automatically become a data controller, right?
So you are a data controller as an event organizer, and you mostly work with either other data controllers or with data processors, but you're like the spider in the web. You're like the first point from where you need to map it all out, how it looks like within your business.
Within your business, okay. I would say maybe we can then move on as a first step of a data or event organizer. After the event is done, we need to really make sure that the whole advertising is done. So Bernardo, you prepared a nice overview.
Yeah, would you like
that,
to?
So I can show the slide that we have here today.
So this is the classic conversion funnel, or it maps the customer journey. And on the right hand side, there are some tools that are classic tools to go through this journey, and they help you to acquire data on those users and also personalize the content. I think that in the last 2 years, what happened was that personalization became much cheaper compared to due to the nowadays we have artificial intelligence that is everywhere. It's cheap to implement, and personalization became the next step. If you look at what marketeers consider the hot topics in marketing, you always see at the top of the surveys personalization and artificial intelligence. So for example, it's possible today, when you take tools like Google AdWords and Facebook Pixels, to retarget people in other websites. Taking one of the sentences that Dorian said, you are always a data processor at this stage, because your website is gathering some data to allow you to personalize this advertisement in other websites. But it's interesting, for example, if you use, when you add a button that people can give you some data, can sign up for your service using a Google account or a Facebook account. So in this case, both you and Google and Facebook will become processors, because they will have your data in that case. But you are always one of the responsible for getting the consent in that case. In the case of MailChimp, they have tools that allow you to create a sign-up template. They have templates for sign-up, and they just updated this sign-up templates, having those boxes that you have to actively tell in what we call a hard opt-in, that you give consent to give you that data, right? And after that point, once the customer has been acquired and activated, you have to provide a way at least offer the choice to that customer to tell you, well, I want you to forget my preferences and don't send me any more information regarding newsletters, new products, and so on. And later on I have some visuals on that.
Yeah. Okay.
And later on we can discuss some other tools that help you to map the customer journey, the touching points that you have, and one of the topics that I find very interesting regarding the GDPR, which is referral. When we look at the data, the number of ideas that marketeers develop, they usually concentrate in awareness and acquisition, and this is due to a lack of skills.
Yeah.
They are usually trained at the universities to look at increasing awareness or acquiring customers.
Yeah.
They don't look too much about retention and how to create virality.
Yeah.
So later on we can have a chat about that too. I want to hear Dorian about this, because it's one of the, at least for us, it's one of the gray areas. There are many tools that you can use, but I'm still not sure which ones I would be sure that I would be complying to create virality.
Nice. I'll just jump in here quickly. We do have the live stream. If you guys have any questions, then just pop them under the live stream in the comments, and we'll try answer them as much as we can. So use the opportunity to have Europe's best growth hacking academy and a lawyer sitting next to me. So ask your questions. And yeah, Dorian.
Just a small clarification when you were speaking about data processors. It is a really important distinction to make between a data controller and a data processor always. When you look at who actually you always have to do the check, like who can access the data and who is in control of it regarding the why, how, and what for. So with that in mind, always figure it out for yourself, like, am I in control of the data? If the answer is no, you are a data processor.
Okay, understood. All right. Should we jump on, let's say, a case study of?
I would like to show some examples. Sign up forms and give you some other suggestions of tools that we consider are complying. We know that we test many tools. We produce videos about the latest tools, and these are the ones that we consider nowadays the ones that are applicable for the situation, and will make your life easier. Even if you have big events or smaller events, you can help them to make a fast experimentation, changing your customer journey more easily in an automated way.
All right, perfect. And do you want me to?
I would like to go one slide further.
Okay.
So this is a typical example from SuperOffice. You can also find more material on this following the short link on the right-hand side, the grow.ac/GDPR. But basically, this is a discussion that even behavioral scientists they have. Many governments they use something similar to a soft opt-in, or what we call an opt-out default passive way of acquiring data. Airports they used to use this a lot, only giving you access to Wi-Fi if you give them your email. In the past, they cannot do that anymore. So this is considered a soft opt-in case. Nowadays, a GDPR compliant form like that would be following the hard opt-in. So you see that we have the smaller boxes at the bottom and some other piece of information. MailChimp has already updated their templates concerning that, and the good thing is that once you acquire this data from your consumer, you can create segments, and after that, every time they turn off or on the pieces of information that they want you to stop sending them, you can have this in an automated way. So it's not just the case for the sign-up forms, but also this thing that maybe Dorian can clarify a little bit later on. This is not totally the right to be forgotten. It's just about preferences, like newsletters and stuff. But you need to give a really easy access for the customer to turning off and on these preferences there. And in the mindset of a growth marketeer, you want to do this in a way that is automated and you can include this in a fast experimentation process. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yeah, Bernardo is mentioning MailChimp, and I think that's because MailChimp definitely did a great job in building the trust between them and their client base. We know what GDPR is. We're completely GDPR compliant. Using our services is not putting you at any risks.
Yeah.
And I think that's
probably
one of the ways.
Last night, many of our people in our audience, you received many emails, and if you look at the bottom, a large proportion of them were using the MailChimp service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have a look at those emails. You'll see that at the bottom they cite this tool.
Yeah, MailChimp also informed their client base to do it through them and use it because that was a very smart move.
Yeah,
in that
and on
sense.
YouTube, if you there are many tutorials nowadays. If you are already using MailChimp, how to create the segments there, and how to work with these facilities that the tool is providing.
So we're compiling a nice overview of all these tools that, according to Growth Hacking Academy and Bernardo, are GDPR compliant and safe to use in that sense. And all of this material will be on our website, eventorganizers.network, to be downloaded after the talk. So that's really nice. And I think one of the topics that we also discussed was that, just like MailChimp, the strategy of them actually being super open about it is a really nice strategy to inform people about, hey, it's not scary. Just let's talk about it. We're completely compliant. Everything is fine. And that is one of the things that we also wanted to touch on, is pretty much GDPR can become a great strategy for anyone, not only in the advertisement business, as a great tool to build trust, right? So you inform people about why you're collecting the data. It's not about hiding this on, we're collecting this data on secretly somewhere in the background.
Yeah,
it's really more talking about it openly.
Yeah, thinking about the business environment of event organizers, I am part of the audience that wants to get timely, relevant suggestions from you guys. Because as Dorian said, if I came to the TNW, I would like to be noticed about other events that are similar, that are of my interest. And this is what I was making reference, is everything is about personalization. So what this report from the BCG is saying is that because of the regulation, of course we are learning with it, but many companies are being extremely conservative on this side. And at the same time, you have a large proportion of your customers that they want personalization. Okay, so once you understand that there is this that this audience is there, you want to have what is called a smart compliance. You comply with the regulation, but you also can take care of other things that are more related with how do I provide a personalized experience to my customer. And once you respect the relevance and you send them timely notices using their data, you don't make them lose their privacy, and you build trust.
Yeah. So, for example, at the event, I can imagine it would be nice to inform people, being like, we are going to collect your data before and during the event, but it is for you, because hence the whole experience of the event will be more personalized. We can suggest the talks that you should go to, for example, during the event. We can suggest people you can meet.
We made a video recently about mass personalization, and we gave many examples of experiments that tested whether being more transparent leads to more conversions.
Yeah.
So looking at the middle of the pirate funnel, when you expose people to your advertising, you'll see that in many examples, if not the majority, when you are more transparent and you don't give them that feeling that we are talking behind their backs, you tell them,
creepy ads.
We are suggesting you this because you provided some data to us and we analyzed it, and according to our analytics team, these are the suggestions. So Booking.com has published a white paper in which they used reviews from customers. They came up with a list of cities, for example, that people describe in a similar way using words, specific words like romantic, cooking and stuff, food, and then later on they created a recommendation engine using this data. But they told the customer, you are receiving this email because we processed your data and we think that this is the best suggestion for your next trip.
Yeah.
And in your case, in the case of events, this is basically the same.
Yeah.
Don't make your customers feel that you are talking behind their backs. Tell them that you actually made an educated guess of what they will like next.
Yeah. Okay, and then this brings us to the next topic, which is collecting data. So we discussed all the journey of the advertisement and the options there, and there's much more data in the slides. We just have a bit of a limited time here, so we can't go through all of it. But you have a lot of examples and links and videos that the Growth Tribe is prepared specially for us, so you can go through that. And we then have other data that event organizers also have to think about. Okay, I have my landing page. This is where my ticketing is done through, and I have all of the let's say the advertising strategy done in GDPR proof. But what about the data that we collect the moment the person enters the festival area or the event area, just like today at the Next Web? And how do we go about that?
Yeah, so first of all, a really important one is the ticketing, especially because if you use a ticketing system, so for example, Eventbrite, Paylogic, or Ticketmaster, they are being the data processor for you as a data controller. You are giving them the assignment to collect the data about the customers and to provide them with tickets which they can buy through that system. However, the moment you want to receive of course you want to receive the guest list and those kind of things, you are collecting data from your customers, from the visitors of the event. So it is important to inform your customers or the visitors of the event that you are actually doing this and what you're doing it for. So you're probably going to use it either for identification with guest list at the door, but you're probably also going to use it for after marketing and the likes. You need to inform the people that you are actually doing these things before doing this, and that's the most essential aspect of that.
And for example, when I buy a ticket, can we safely assume that I'm signing up to all of this, or does that have to be specifically stated? Let's say in the ticketing provider should have if they want to service the event organizers properly, just like MailChimp, make it much easier for them.
In the offline environment,
provide a statement where by buying this ticket, you are clearly communicating your interest and your intent, and hence we are going to be processing the data in this form. How would that work?
I would always opt for that, because that's a much easier legal base to employ rather than using the one which is called legitimate interest of your own company. You can always try and prove that it's a legitimate interest. However, if you actually receive the consent of the person, you're always in clear.
Yeah, but then you cannot also force people to agree, right? So you cannot not let people to your event if they say, I don't want you to collect this. So you have to let them into the event, but you cannot collect the data around them. How do you go about it? For example, one of the really interesting case studies, I think, is
that's an interesting one, because it actually falls into three parts. First of all, you can either provide consent or not. Second of all, if you are put on a guest list and they need to actually know who is on the guest list, it falls under the legal base that it is necessary for a contractual obligation, because you cannot provide them entrance if you don't know who's at the door, And the third one is the one of the legitimate interest. So for after marketing wise, you would need to provide that, yes, we are doing this because of legitimate interest. So there can always be multiple legal bases in play with only one legal action, so to speak.
Okay, all right. So, but as we said, the best strategy is by building trust is just saying up front, by coming to this event, you're purchasing a ticket, hence we're going to process this so that we can provide a better experience for you.
I do believe that there will be some kind of J-curve in this learning process, because just after this week, we will be probably out of many newsletters, things that we used to, maybe receive in our emails and do not pay much attention. But cookies, they have been created for websites to actually help us to find products, to receive these recommendations. But obviously, because it became so cheap to implement these things, there was an excess of usage. So that's why I make reference to other regulations, from the past. There is this. Usually, you have this reality shock, and then some people will actually miss them at some point. And then they will be more educated, and then they will now they understand that it's not only about having the intention to receive that information. It's also about something that is useful and it's timely.
And then we go back to this whole personalization again. So all the newsletter that I'll be receiving in my inbox will, for the first time in my life, actually be relevant and personalized to what I really care about.
I saw that some of the companies, they opt to unenroll me if I didn't opt in now with a button.
That's probably not legal though, or is it?
To actually unenroll you from what? From mailing lists.
From mailing lists.
You get an email saying if I don't opt in now, I'll be automatically part of it.
No, it is actually legal because they don't have to provide you those emails to fulfill a contractual obligation or anything. You just didn't provide clear consent, so they are like, we're gonna play it safe. Let's not do this anymore.
This are the examples that the BCG cited as the ultra-conservative companies. So I think that this is it's where there is some exaggeration, but also it's mitigating risks.
Definitely. I would imagine that for really high risk data collection companies, that they would actually use this tactic, because that's
it's like resetting risk. And okay, let's start again.
Pretty much.
And then also people say like, okay, my database is going to get much smaller, but eventually it's also only going to be the people that are really interested in your service, and they say, I want to stay on the email list. So it's a little bit of a filter also for...
there is this recent research by the YouGov from the UK, and then they mapped that there is it's not the majority, but it's a very important audience that are the personalized pioneers. And these are the guys that are actually choosing to stay and be informed.
Nice. Okay. How about payments at the events, Dorian?
So
there's this new trend of NFC tags and automated payment systems at the events. Obviously, me as an event organizer, I want to know which products were purchased at my events, how many beers, how much food, so that I know for the next year. That's the learning from the data for me. But can I do this? Do I have to inform people about this upfront, or how does this work?
There's two ways in which you can collect the data. The first one you mentioned is if you only want the statistics, how much beer at what times, how many coins were purchased at what moment.
Oh, we don't do coins.
So then you're actually only tracking the anonymized data, because it isn't linked to any personal data. It is just anonymized data, like, hey, this many users who went to this festival bought this many drinks, etc. But the moment you link an RFID chip to your personal profile. So let's say you sign up, you provide them with all the details for later. I don't know, that you can win some stuff, something like that, and then you track them actually, like, okay, so user X bought this many coins at this moment, and it only went up till this moment, and then it fell down. And if you actually use that data, then you're actually collating quite risky personal data about your visitors.
About how alcoholic they are, and they do not want to.
This would be the dream world of behavioral scientists. When I was doing research on these matters, the best data sets would be those ones that I could correlate personality traits with buying behavior.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the technical name for this type of data sets is that one is like a basket analysis. You only have in each case a group of products that have been bought together at a specific place. And when you move to the second stage, when you have, for example, the linkage with your wristband or whatever device or sensors, then it became a data set that you can use for a recommender system, because then you can identify the person and retarget that person by looking at the preferences that person revealed to you in a previous event.
And that is personal data, and for that you need explicit consent. You can't just go and say like, hey, this is what we do, read our privacy policy, because that is quite it is quite sensitive personal data.
Yeah.
So I would advise against using this unless it's like in a controlled small scale environment with only like a few hundred people at an event where you can actually focus, especially like a B2B event. This is what you could do if you ask their consent prior to that, because they're all interested in the data that you're gonna accumulate.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with partners, right? So most of the partnerships in the event scene are based on we give you money and then you give us your guest list, for example. So that is the data is the new gold, as we say. Also in the whole AI, you as a data scientist will probably confirm that. That is interesting to then have these agreements in place, right? So the way we can then do this is because you can still transfer the data between each other, right? It just has to be very clearly communicated to the people that are on the database as well as to the people that will receive the data in a contractual form, which is either then the data processing or data control.
At the end of the day, you need to provide the data subject, so the person whose data is collected, exactly where you got it from, how you used it, who else has access to it, and how to get it all removed and whatever.
And in that case, everything is fine, and people have the option.
I have still doubts about referrals.
Okay, let's come to your referrals then. You really want to?
Because I want to use this opportunity to ask. It's the best. I think it's the best date, the best environment, an expert here about regulation. And I suppose that not many people have thought about that, because it's one of those steps of the what we call the customer journey that we usually do not think too much about how to create virality, how to use my customer base to refer my service to other people. Yeah. And it seems to be one of the cheapest ways. Last week I got 50 euros back from TransferWise. It's a platform that I use, and I saw that they have compliance in their platform, because they just give me a link, and I share this link on Facebook or by email with other friends. So
it's the same, like, let's say the taxi apps in the city also provide that, right? Like, share this link with your friends, and if they use the code, they'll get 10 euros. You'll get 10 euros. But
I suppose we cannot, for example, give the email of a friend to the company, and the company sends the email to them, right?
Yeah.
If I use the link, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's like it's really easy actually. You're acting as a consumer and you're sending it to another consumer. So you don't need consent between two consumers. However, if you are sending an email to the company and that company is sending an email to the consumer, they never acquired the second person's consent.
Perfect, yeah.
So that is with all possibilities. So even if a company offers, like, which I saw a great solution, like if you want to refer to someone, it opens up like mail to and then the double dot, and it opens your email provider, and you can automatically send an email which is personalized by the company itself, but you actually fill in the email address and you press send, and it sends it out from your email address. You're in the clear because it's still you asking a friend of yours.
Yeah.
So the same would apply, for example, for the plus ones then on a guest list. So you have, right? You can just bring a plus one and then you fill in their details. Hence, you have to kind of because you have that right in the ticketing. How would that work then?
Well,
I'm buying the tickets for me and my colleagues, right? And I just fill in the emails and all.
So
let's
take another test case. If you are like an airline provider and you fill in the details of the second passenger you're traveling with, and they only send you an email with the ticket itself, it falls under like the legitimate interest. And
so they make you the distributor of the tickets, and they do not contact the people themselves. Then it's fine.
However, with a referral, it's always a promotional offer, and they haven't acquired the email address, so it doesn't fall within like the legal base of legitimate interest, and you actually need consent for that.
Understood. One of my favorite and probably the greatest areas is footage on the events. How about that? I come to a huge conference, or be it even festival, which is even better because it's more crowded and not business oriented, so let's make it really for leisure. I go to, I don't know, Burning Man, but I don't want anyone to know that I've been there, so I inform the organizers saying I do not want any footage of me being done. And it's a festival with 15,000 people. How do the event organizers go about this?
To be honest, I would say the best way is just to provide people with as much information as possible that you're doing that, and if they have anything about it, that they can state beforehand that they don't want to be filmed and photographed. However, it will happen that you don't notice the photographer and he or she takes a picture of you, and later it gets uploaded on Facebook, on other social media, you get tagged in it, and there goes your privacy. To be honest, still, this is a gray area because there is no explicit consent provided. So I can imagine this will provide a few cases where people actually ask actually sue the companies for doing this.
Would there be? Sorry. Would there be?
I'm very curious about that. It's because it's one of the areas in artificial intelligence that the price of buying this service, for example, not only photographs. I can just have a camera and I can identify faces if I have these faces in a database, or I can, for example, infer emotions from these people that I'm filming.
That is actually being already used at the events now.
Exactly.
As the emotional response at the crowd.
And this is another case of artificial intelligence applications that since 2015 they became much cheaper than they were before, if not better than a human to identify objects, for example. And it would be soon used in a large scale, and it has been used even for governments nowadays to like a big
China,
brother, you know.
In China, they're using it already.
Yeah, it's good that you are
public,
making reference about that, because it's another topic to think about.
So one of the most important things about the whole GDPR, which I would like to state, is that it is just a law. It is just a law at the moment. It is a large bookwork of various articles, and until we have clear case law by the EU Court of Justice what we can and cannot do, it is still the guesswork of many lawyers, many scientists, data scientists, various people about how do we interpret this and what can we do and what can we not do.
And it also, opens up a new door, because just 3 weeks ago GDPR was named the next $3.5 billion industry, and this week it's already a $9 billion industry, so there's a lot of tools coming out. We have discussed yesterday with Robert Fussell from Crowded. They're launching their Consently, so there's a lot of these cookie pop-ups that other companies will do it for you, so you don't have to break your brains with it, and you just install it and you're GDPR proof. A lot of consultancies popping up where they GDPR proof your whole company. But there's also going to be a new platform for a lot of solutions for event organizers to make their life easier, and that is partially what we do at also the Event Organisers Network. Is we're scouting these newest tools and newest technologies out there to see how can we make our life easier.
To be like a hotjar or segment for event organizers.
Yeah,
like
because you want to organize events.
Whole journey,
you want to organize events, but
it's a business opportunity.
It is, and I'm also thinking, for example, with the photos, right? If there's an event that it took a lot of photos, but there's a couple of people that say I do not want to be on these photos, they could have a platform or system in place where you publish these photos only to these people, tell them now you have the opportunity to mark the photos which you don't want us to publish, and then afterwards you put these photos online, for example. So you just gather their data, inform them before it goes public, and give them the opportunity to delete themselves, because otherwise from a big festival the amount of footage and amount of photography is so much that it creates a lot of work for me. So
once you acquire it, you cannot track.
Exactly. So if there will be a tool that this is a shout out to anyone that wants to build this tool for event organizers, I will really appreciate that. I'm thinking I'm going to check whether we have any questions. I'll give a last shout out to everyone that's watching us. If you have any questions to Dorian about the legal stuff, or to Bernardo about any growth hacking techniques that you can use as an event organizer to promote your events, then take your chance now. And a little bit more about the event organizers and what we do. So we recently launched a platform. We believe that the events industry is now booming, as we also see with all the conferences coming along, and the events industry itself is quite outdated, I feel. So what we're doing is really looking at the latest developments and the emerging deep technologies like artificial intelligence, XR, IoT, robotics, and how can we plug this into events to make them smarter, better, and more sustainable and more enjoyable for us. So that then we're back at the personalization again, right? So I think we can slowly conclude that the GDPR is really more about building trust and filtering through your databases that are full of people that don't want to be on the list, and for you and your brand it actually makes no sense in spamming them. So I think it might be seen, right now it's very annoying with all the emails in our inboxes, but I think after a couple of weeks when the hype is over, it's going to prove to be quite useful for everyone.
And to be honest, just don't panic, just think clearly what your business does, what you can and cannot do under GDPR, and as long as you aren't like $1 billion company, it's quite easy to grasp what you need to do to get your company GDPR approved.
Yeah, you said that the EU watchdogs will first go for the companies that have more than 250 employees, or what was the numbers?
So so that is like one of the requirements. If you have more than 250 employees, you need a data protection officer, which is like person specifically in charge of handling the data within that company. And below that, it is up to you to figure it out. But that's like pretty much the trade-off. So they're looking specifically at the big players, the big data users, so that they fall under this regulation and they don't sell your data to anyone, etc.
Yeah. All right. So know your vendors, because that is very important to state, is that under GDPR, the responsibility is shared.
Yeah.
So if you are completely GDPR proof, but the tools that you're using aren't, like for example, some ticketing providers that I wanted to invite to this debate just refused to speak about GDPR. So that also shows a little bit of people are a bit alarmed.
Could be here.
But that is exactly that ticket provider that didn't come on
this conversation.
and the fourth chair. So that is important, and that is something where I think Dorian is really specializing on creating these contracts for data processing.
Data processing agreements. Yeah.
Agreements.
Yeah.
So to me, for example, happens a lot when I organize a meetup somewhere. The venue asks me for the guest list. It's something that I'm now telling them, well, after Friday I cannot send it to you anymore. The counter argument from their side is like, well, we need that for the safety. And so this is where, in case I have a data processing agreement in place, I can provide that guest list to them with having them signing that this is specifically only provided them for the safety, and
that they won't market it,
and they're
to
not
those people,
allowed to use it for any other purposes.
Yeah.
But if they do, then you as an event organizer, again,
you're liable. You're always liable as the data controller.
That is a bit painful. That is the scary part for me, because how do you check? How do you control that? So use the reliable tools. Use the tools that are very loud about being GDPR proof, because that's the way they roll.
And be prepared for this J curve that we expect to happen. Reducing trust for a few weeks or even months, and then be prepared to acquire the opportunities that will come from people that are realizing that they lost value due to lower personalization. Okay. This is something that we expect to do that. We are all humans. We like to be treated in a special way.
Well, plus technology is here to make our life easier. So if the recommendations work and make it easier for me to navigate around the big conference with lots of content, and if I get the recommendations about exactly the stages that are interesting for me, I would love it. And I don't have to go through this huge program.
Try not to sound creepy to the customers.
That's the most important
behind their
thing.
Backs.
All right, so I'll show the last slide, which is Event Organisers Network, Growth Tribe, and Flawless Legal Agency. The slides with much more information will be also available at our website, eventorganizers.network, for download. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions regarding this after our stream. So thank you very much for joining us. Stay tuned for more content that's going to happen here at the Stream My Event Live View Studio. And hello from the next web. Thanks for watching.